Hey everybody, this is Jim Prusak, physical therapist and owner of the Pain PT. And today we're going to talk about one of the keys to healing chronic pain, and that's self-awareness. Self-awareness is one of these things that if we don't have it, we really can't make a change. Now, what is self-awareness? It's the ability to look at ourselves. It could be like looking in a mirror. We need to take our attention and direct it from the outside world, which we typically are always focusing on through our senses, and direct it more to our inner world, what's happening inside of us. Now, self awareness can be described as many different things, as you can see here on the page. Now, we can call self awareness self observation, we can call it presence, which Eckhart Tolle has done in some of his books, like The Power of Now. He uses that word of developing presence. We also can develop what's called consciousness. These are all the words for the same thing. One of the more common words we use is mindfulness. And when we develop mindfulness, what we're really doing is we're working on staying more present. We're working with our conscious mind, right? We're working on activating the conscious part of our mind versus the unconscious part of our mind. And as you can see here, the unconscious mind is a really big piece of the mind. It's running 24/7, all day and all night. And if we're not conscious or if we're not mindful, the unconscious mind will run us. It'll make our decisions for us. It will create our thoughts for us. It'll create our actions for us. And typically, when we're stuck in the unconscious mind, we have all sorts of crazy things happening in our brains. We have thoughts popping up. We've got to do this. I got to do that. This pain is terrible. I can't do that. I'm going to get worse. This is never going to get better. And then we have all these other emotions that come as a result of it. God, this sucks. I'm frustrated. I feel hopeless. I'm sad. I'm depressed. I'm afraid to go do anything. I'm fearful. I'm frightened. So our brains create all this crazy stuff. And basically, what happens is we get stuck being mindful instead of mindful. And our minds are just full of information constantly running. Now, this is the normal monkey mind, as we call it. And how it relates to chronic pain is that basically we are unconsciously reacting to pain. We're unconsciously reacting to the symptoms we feel in our body. And it sets off a whole bunch of thoughts, feelings, emotions. It makes us more tight, and it actually makes the pain worse. So, really, we're stuck between the past and the future, the unconscious mind. We're regretting the past, all the things that happened to us, and that we haven't gotten better. And we're running towards the future, and all we want to do is get better and see ahead. And the very thing we don't do is stay focused on the now. And we know the only time is right now. We have no tomorrow, and there is no yesterday. But the brain, and especially the unconscious mind, loves to operate in the past and in the future because that's where it can set off a whole bunch of our thoughts and our feelings. Fear, for example, is always about the future, right? About doing something in the future that might hurt us. Whereas regret or frustration or sadness or grief might be about something that happened to us in the past, or possibly to something that's happening to us now. But typically, we tend to focus on past or future. So, what do we need to do with chronic pain? How can we work with it? We need to actually develop some self awareness. This is so important. This is the first step to actually making a change with chronic pain. Without self awareness, we lose the ability to make any type of change in our brains. But when we take steps towards self awareness, towards becoming conscious or becoming sort of aware of what's happening inside ourselves, which is our symptoms, our thoughts, our emotions, our stresses, when we start to become aware of these things, we actually start to get our brain working in the right way. We start moving our brain in the right direction. We start strengthening the part of our brain that works with mindfulness and consciousness. And this part of the brain has been shown to make changes that are very similar to the areas of the brain that process chronic pain. So if you watch some of my other YouTube videos, you'll know that these three areas of the brain are also implicated in chronic pain, the prefrontal cortex, the amygdala, and the hippocampus. And we know from people who practice mindfulness, practice self-awareness and self-observation, what we know is that the prefrontal cortex gets stronger. It gets bigger and thicker. And the reverse and inverse happens to the amygdala. It actually shrinks in size, it gets smaller. And that's the part of our brain that processes emotions and fear, right? The fight or flight system. So we're actually shrinking that system when we're using mindfulness and using self-awareness. We're strengthening our prefrontal cortex, which is our area of our brain that takes actions and control and sends messages to all the other parts of the brain and body. And then the hippocampus also gets stronger. And this part of the brain helps us have different type of memories and also coordinates between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So it's really important when we actually are using mindfulness and self-awareness, we're actually using neuroplasticity of the brain. We're actually making a change in the brain. So as our awareness gets stronger and stronger and we continue to practice it in relation to pain, what happens is we're changing our brains. We're also learning that with awareness comes a change in perception. We perceive things differently, especially with chronic pain. When we become aware of something, we have the chance to perceive it differently. And we know when our perceptions change, our reality changes as well. We move from thinking that pain and aches and muscle tensions and soreness and all the symptoms of chronic pain, we move from basically something that's being negative to something that's positive. This is called reframing. We're learning how to reframe our symptoms, reframe our emotions, reframe our thoughts. This all starts from self-awareness. This all starts from our own mindfulness or consciousness. Without it, we don't have the ability to reframe. We're just going to go along for the ride with our unconscious mind. So while we're doing this with our self-awareness, we have the ability to say, it's okay. What we're experiencing right now, whether they're pain symptoms, whether they're uncomfortable emotions, whether they're negative thoughts, catastrophizing thoughts, we have the ability to say these are okay when we're conscious and aware versus saying no, these things are not okay. Now, we don't actually consciously say no. Our unconscious mind already says no. It's been primed and it's been learned to say no. It doesn't want these things. No, this is not good. No, everything's terrible. And when that happens, it sets off that pattern and vicious cycle called the pain cycle in us. So it all starts with self-awareness. And when we could learn to tap into that, what we're doing is we're tapping into the parts of the brain that calm things down. That fight or flight system turns off. And we actually have the ability to let things settle. I like to call this letting the dust settle. So when we're tapping into self-awareness and mindfulness, and we're doing it in a way that we perceive everything to be okay, what happens is our negative thoughts, our tensions, our physical symptoms, our negative emotions, and all the stresses that go with chronic pain, they all start to settle. They all start to settle, and we start to feel a bit more peaceful, a bit more happy, a bit more open. We actually just start to feel better. So we have to tap into self-awareness. This is number one. It's the first thing we need to use when we're going to make a change. And we need to become aware of ourselves and do that in a different way. We need to perceive ourselves as being okay versus something being wrong. And that's the truth with chronic pain, is that we are okay. There isn't anything wrong. We know the brain and nervous system are more associated with chronic pain than any type of tissue damage. The body has healed. So the moral of the story here is we just need to work on developing our self-awareness in relationship to chronic pain and learn to perceive and understand our pain as nothing wrong, but that everything we experience is okay. And when we do that, things change. Thanks, everybody. If you like what you hear, please give me a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel here, and we'll talk to you soon.